Hey, I'm Jana, the little sister.
And I'm Jeff, her big brother. Welcome to Sibling Rivalry, a podcast about our favorite sport, baseball.
This week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, the championship series are set. Only 2 bubbles left.
I can't talk right now. I'm helping to sandblast the remnants of the asterisks from Dodger Stadium. So listen to some SRBB headlines in the meantime.
Another baseball great has headed into the cornfield. Edward Whitey Ford, nicknamed the chairman of the board, passed away at the age of 91 at his home in Long Island, New York. The Hall of Famer signed with the Yankees in 1947, making his major league debut in 1950. After serving 2 years in the Army during the Korean War, he returned to the Yankees in 1953. He pitched for the Yankees for 16 seasons. He was part of 11 pennant winners and 6 World Series championships. The 1961 Cy Young Award winner and World Series MVP was also a 10-time All-Star and 2-time ERA leader. Ford proclaimed he had been a Yankee fan since he was 5 years old at his Hall of Fame induction in 1974. The Yankees retired Ford's number 16 the same year.
At the end of 6th grade, a friend told me I had to listen to a new album he just got. I sat there, mouth agape, as the monster sounds of the music washed over me. Eddie Van Halen headed out to the great gig in the sky on October 6th, ending his battle with throat cancer. He erupted onto the scene and changed a whole generation and beyond. Born on January 26, 1955 in Amsterdam, Netherlands, his family immigrated in 1962 to Pasadena, California. And along with his older brother Alex, he started the band that would become Van Halen. Eddie changed the way people viewed the guitar.
In response by the NFL Referees Association about coaches pulling down their masks to yell at them in close proximity, referees will now be able to throw their flags on teams with an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty.
And after missing the playoffs for 7 consecutive seasons, the Los Angeles Lakers are the newly crowned NBA champions. The Lakers defeated the Miami Heat decisively in Game 6 to take the series 4 games to 2. LeBron James took home his 4th Finals MVP, becoming the only player to win it with 3 different teams. This is the Lakers' first title in 10 years and their 17th NBA title, tying the Boston Celtics for the most in NBA history. You can find these and past week's headlines on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com. Remember to rate and subscribe wherever you listen, and tell a friend to listen to the Sibling Rivalry Baseball Podcast. And the hits just keep coming. In his final game on September 30th, 1984, also his 2,649th career game, Joe Morgan doubled off of Royal starter Mark Kubica in his final and only at-bat of the day for the Oakland A's. A year later, he was in the broadcast booth for the Cincinnati Reds when former teammate Pete Rose got his 4,192nd career hit. Joe would remain in the booth until 2009 when he took a job with the Reds as an advisor. Morgan was born on September 19, 1943 in Texas, the oldest of 6 children. At 5 years old, his family relocated to Oakland, California. While he was a standout player in high school, he didn't get noticed until he played at Oakland City College, where the Houston Colt 45s signed him in 1962. He made his MLB debut on September 21st, 1963 versus the Phillies. While Joe was a solid player for the Colt 45s and Astros, he was traded in 1971 to the Reds with Cesar Geronimo and Jack Billingham. The Big Red Machine was in its infancy, but on its way to being one of the best teams ever. His career would blossom in Cincinnati. He would win back-to-back NL MVP awards as part of the back-to-back World Series champion Reds. Over his career, he was a 10-time All-Star, 1-time All-Star MVP, 5-time Gold Glove Award winner, and 2-time ML Player of the Year. The Reds retired his number 8 in 1987. He was a first ballot Hall of Famer in 1990. In 2015, he was diagnosed with a weird syndrome that developed into leukemia. On October 11, 2020, Joe headed into the cornfield from his home in Danville, California. This is another player, more than like when we talked about Bob Gibson, that played during the magical time of my baseball growing up. Figure Big Red Machine, I was 9, 10 years old, 11. He was part of that it just captured my imagination. And at that point, the Dodgers and the Reds were in the same division. And while they were rivals, it was hard not to be a fan of that Reds team. Joe Morgan, Johnny Bench, Pete Rose, Tony Perez, all these guys, Hall of Famers. It was just such an incredible team. I loved watching them play, and they were definitely a favorite. We always, when we played baseball, we'd always go out and imitate different players' batting stances. And his was one we always imitated because he would pump his back arm, his left arm, when he was up batting, and he batted from the left side. And it was kind of like, well, what I found out later was he always kept dropping his elbows. So Nellie Fox told him to flap his arm like a chicken wing trying to fly, and that would help him keep his elbow up. And it did, but it became his signature. So we'd all be out batting. Who am I? Who am I? You know, with that back arm like that. I remember that is always one of the biggest things. I remember later on being here in LA, a big story about him being tackled by the LAPD at LAX one time because they had profiled him as being like a drug runner, a courier. So he ended up suing the department and winning for a violation of his civil rights, which clearly it was. But it was just a straight profile. They saw him look like somebody who might be carrying drugs. And instead of just pulling him aside, they like tackled him and hit him hard. And then, of course, something that maybe you remember a little better is I remember a lot of games listening to him and John Miller broadcasting.
Yeah, great broadcasting duo on ESPN.
You didn't realize how good they were till they were gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
I really missed them.
Joe Morgan went on with the job with the Reds, and then ESPN didn't renew John Miller's contract, and so both of them were gone. And the people that they brought in to replace them just weren't the same caliber. And you just realized at that point, it's like, wow, they were really a good team. I'd like to have them back. Anyway, so long, Joe, Little Joe, or the Little General, as they also called him. Condolences to the family of Joe Morgan, and Cornfield from this year is getting kind of full. So we're down to the Final Four. The championship series has been set. For whatever reason, the Asterix made it through. And we'll play the Rays down in San Diego. And then, of course, the Dodgers and the Braves will take each other on in Arlington. Before we get too deep into it, I do want to mention one little note that popped up. Rick Renteria, the White Sox manager, and the White Sox have apparently mutually agreed to part ways.
Well, depending on the headline that you read.
Right. For whatever reason, the White Sox are looking for a manager. And who are the two top names that pop up for the White Sox managing job?
Well, I could think of a few, but I don't think they fit into the White Sox. But
there's two names specifically who have come up for this job the minute that it became probably even a possibility that this was going to happen.
Well, I want to say Alex Cora, but I think he's going to be the Red Sox manager.
But
maybe
he's not yet.
He's not yet. And then, of course, AJ Hinch.
Those are the top two.
I didn't want to say their names because I think they're cheaters.
The other name that's been thrown about a little bit lately for a GM job, Jeff Lunau from the Asterix.
Right, yeah.
He built a great system in St. Louis. He built a great system here. And as we know, their biggest problems, Lunau was probably less so in the loop, but allowed it all to happen.
Right.
Than AJ Hinch, who was right down there and saw it and heard it firsthand. But Jeffrey Lunau has been coming up as a potential GM for the Angels.
Oh, okay.
And while his system might be okay, I'd rather, if he's going to be involved, you put him in as like a ghost, because I feel like him being in the office day to day, if all of a sudden he makes a couple of good changes and the Angels seem to be significantly better next year or the year after, the Angels are cheating now.
Yeah. See, that's the thing with those guys is they have a stigma attached to them. Mm-hmm. Especially AJ Hinch. Because
I think Alex Cora even more than AJ Hinch, because it came back that Alex Cora was kind of one of the planners of all this.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, they have that stigma. So yeah, I would feel the same way because like, oh yeah, they're good now because they got a system going on. Which buzzers are they using? Yeah, I think I might
Yeah, he
want to
had a
stay
whole
away
year
from
away
them.
from baseball to come up with a better idea on how to cheat.
Yeah, they're marketing it.
Yeah, now there's going to be a book out, new strategies in baseball. All right. Well, with that, former team of all three of those guys, the Houston Asterix, emphasis on ass, were able to get out of Oakland with a 3-1 series victory. Guys all of a sudden started playing like they knew how to play baseball.
Yeah, I think October seems to be their month, especially Alex Bregman. He seems to thrive. The ball was really flying at Dodger Stadium. I caught a couple of innings here and there of the games. I just had a really hard time watching the stadium. That was the toughest thing. If they had been somewhere else, I know we mentioned this before, it wouldn't have been such a big deal. But first, I don't think they deserve to be there. And then second, to play in Dodger Stadium is just wrong.
I think it was Matt Vasgersian said something about the effect that they made themselves at home, put their feet up on the furniture kind of thing, that they made themselves at home, also kind of being disrespectful to their environment was the two things I got out of it. It was pretty warm most of their series, so that helped the ball fly a little more. Not that Dodger Stadium is hard to hit home runs in, but the heat also helps make it easier for the balls to fly. So they did have that. Altuve, who had issues, whether it be just slumping or injury issues, hit 400, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs.
Yeah, both teams had 12 home runs in the series. They set a division series record, which when you look at it, when you look at the scores, 10-5 in the first game, 5-2. Oakland had the one win, 9-7, but then in the last game, 11-6. I knew the Asterix had a lot of home runs, but I didn't realize that Oakland also had 12 home runs on their side too. But they obviously didn't get the memo either, just like the Twins, and they just kind of whimpered out.
I was less surprised by this outcome than I was with the Twins. The Twins had better pitching, a lot more firepower.
Yeah.
The A's kind of limped in.
Yeah, they did.
No Matt Chapman, which could have made a difference. Matt Olson hit 2 home runs, but he hit under 200 for the series, so he was pretty much a non-factor. The big guy actually for them was Chad Pinder, who had 5 RBIs off of 2 home runs. He was the one that really fueled that win. But other than that, Marcus Semien hit 533.
Liam Hendricks, I think they needed him on the mound every day, every game. He seemed to be the only one that had the fire, I guess.
Yeah.
Just from highlights, just from interviews that I saw, he seemed to know what was on the line. But yeah, they did limp in. And you wonder, with Matt Chapman out, would that have made a difference for them, that extra bat in the lineup?
That might have helped them score a couple more runs, but the pitching was terrible for the A's. Chris Bassett had the lowest ERA of the 4 starters, 6.75.
Yeah, not going to win.
Frankie Montas, who was pretty much supposed to be their ace going in, he was their opening day starter. He had an ERA over 12 for this. He just was terrible. Both Minaya and Luzardo, ERAs of 8.31. Both of them threw 4.1 innings. Bassett only threw 4 innings. Montas was, I think, only like 2 2/3 or something like that. It didn't help that the Asterix got hot right there. The guy we hate the most, I think now, Carlos Correa, was the guy who led the team. 11 RBIs in that series, 3 home runs. That didn't help. They couldn't stop him. But all the main guys hit well. Bregman hit over 400. Brantley, 368, 2 home runs and 5 RBIs. And I was hoping some of that fire from that brawl from earlier in the season was going to help, but it didn't seem to give them anything. Laureano, who was the focal point of that brawl. Did hit a couple home runs, had 4 RBIs in the series, but they just couldn't put it together.
No, they'd get hits, but they just couldn't get it together. And if they were ahead, then the Asterisks would just hit a couple home runs, and
Well, I don't know
that
how
would
many
be the
times
end of that.
I'd see the score. Ooh, A's are ahead. And I go, maybe I'll go check in. And by the time I'd get there, the Asterisks were already 3 runs up before I ever got there to do that. And I'm like, I'm just not going to pay attention to it. To see them at Dodger Stadium winning, that added to my pain with that series. It was a hard one. Now they're going to go in and they're going to play the winner of the Rays Yankees. And that was a series that I pretty much figured the Rays or the Yankees, provided both of them came out strong out of their series, either one of them could beat the Asterisks without an issue. Kind of leaning towards the Yankees a little bit because I felt like they had more motivation to beat them from a revenge standpoint.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened. This series, as opposed to the National League series, where both the Braves and the Dodgers swept their opponents, the Rays and the Yankees went to a full 5 games, whereas the A's and the Asterisks did 4. This was a little better matchup. The Rays did take 3 of the games. The Yankees took games 1 and 4. The Rays took 2, 3, and 5. Probably the biggest name for the Rays through this series, Arozarena.
Yeah, Randy. I know his first name.
Arozarena hit .421, 3 home runs, 3 RBIs. So he only hit solo home runs, but he hit them at the right time. We'll have to say, though, after that first game, it kind of looked like the Yankees were going to come in and go on a roll.
Yeah, I think after that first game, going in, I really thought the Yankees, they had that revenge factor coming into the game because over the season, they were 2-8 against the Rays. They had the dust up with Aroldis Chapman, that whole thing. And the first game, they won 9-3. Giancarlo Stanton hit a grand slam in the 9th inning. Blake Snell gave up 3 home runs in that game. The Yankees were using their long ball formula to go the distance in that game. And so looking at that game, really thought, wow, they're going to just stomp the Rays. Nope. And they had Garrett Cole on the mound,
that was
too.
Probably the biggest thing for them in that first game was Garrett Cole. Blake Snell didn't pitch poorly, but he didn't pitch great.
Right.
Gave up a lot of those runs. 5 innings pitched, 6 hits, 4 runs in that first game, whereas Garrett Cole, over 2 starts, because he start 1 and 5, had a 3.18 ERA, only gave up 4 runs on 7 hits through that time. In that game 5, he wasn't the cause of the loss.
No.
As far as things go, Stanton, 10 RBIs on the series. Hicks and Judge both had 3 RBIs. Judge had 2 home runs, but he didn't hit very well other than the 2 home runs. Luke Voit, the home run champion of the season, 1 home run in the series. DJ LeMahieu, while he hit .273, which is respectable, it's not .350. The bats kind of fell off a little bit after game 1. The pitching after Garrett Cole fell off. I know that in game 2, especially a lot of former Yankees, including A-Fraud, CC Sabathia, they all came out and blasted Aaron Boone for the bullpen game. They started Davy Garcia, who's a rookie, but he pitched 1 inning. And then they went to the bullpen, and actually it was J.A. Happ who basically gave up everything in that game. So, yeah, J.A. Happ ended up with a 13.50 ERA. Him and Adam Ottavino, another guy that they spent money on to bolster that bullpen, had issues. Zach Britton had his moments. Tanaka, who was their number 2, pretty solid all season, fell apart as well. They didn't provide as much of a challenge for the Rays as we thought based off of game 1. Even the win in game 4, you just knew it was just a delay of the inevitable, that the Rays were going to end up taking it. I mean, Glasnow started game 2, went 7 1/3, gave up 4 runs on 3 hits, but struck out 12.
Yeah, and his 8 pitches that he had of 100 miles per hour or more were the 3rd most by a starter in a postseason game since 2008. The speed on his pitches were just crazy in that game.
And doesn't he look like he should be like a teen drama movie,
Yeah.
like an 80s movie or something, but he's like the arrogant, stuck-up kid, and he comes to
Yes.
school driving like a Porsche or some high-end convertible type car. And he is a Southern California boy, so maybe he has that. But he's got that. He's tall. He's like what, 6'7", 6'8", or something like that. But he has that look
Yeah.
that you would just expect him to be hanging out with James Spader in a John Hughes movie.
That's who I was thinking of. I was thinking he's Steph from Pretty in Pink, hanging out in the hallways, smoking a cigarette when he's supposed to be in class.
And when he pulls in, it's like, I can't believe somebody's in my parking spot.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
he had a good game. Charlie Morton came in, and that'll be interesting that as the Rays move on, Charlie Morton, former Asterisk,
Yeah.
will he take care of his team when that series fires up? He pitched 5 innings, gave up 2 runs on 4 hits. Blake Snell kind of fell off as the starters went. They pitched all right. Obviously, Glasnow had the best outing of the starters, but really the thing that stood out for the Rays was their bullpen, especially Diego Castillo and Pete Fairbanks were 2 of the guys who were huge for him. Castillo, I heard him say many times on the broadcast that he's got like a rubber arm. So they're like, you could go out there and throw him every day for multiple innings, and it looked like it.
I liked in Game 5 that Mike Brousseau hit the home run off of Aroldis Chapman, kind of ended everything, tied everything up nicely with a bow as
Right,
Aroldis
like, okay,
Chapman.
Yeah, I'm not, you hit me in the head, and now I'm going to hit a home run off of you.
Yeah. So.
And it was off of one of Aroldis over 100 miles an hour, at 100 miles an hour, that he went out into left field with it. It was a good series. It was fun to watch overall. And I had my moments where I was pulling for the Yankees, and I had moments when I was pulling for the Rays.
I thought the Yankees would, I picked the Yankees to win in the series just going into it. But yeah, the more you watched and the more you saw Tampa Bay, I think I was rooting maybe a little bit more for Tampa Bay once the series got started. Just maybe too, because I'm not a Yankees fan. They're not a team that I would go and want to root for unless I was going to Yankee Stadium. Then I would definitely pick a team they're playing that I like less.
Well, that's what I told you. I want to go to every ballpark, but I never want to go when one of my favorite teams is playing, being Angels or Dodgers. So that way I can root for the home team. Feel good about buying a hat or a t-shirt from the team. And honestly, I'm ready to buy a Rays hat and maybe even a Rays t-shirt or jersey, depending on what they can do with the Asterisks. If they can sweep the Asterisks, I will buy a jersey. But if they can just beat them, I'll get a hat. I can't guarantee I can root for them beyond the ALCS, but I would definitely root for them beyond if the Dodgers don't move on to the World Series.
Yeah, so. I think I've already, you kind of pick those teams. Okay, well, I've got this team. This is my team. And then who's my second team that if they don't win, who am I going to root for? Yeah, I'm the same way. I think the Yankees came in thinking the firepower was just going to work, but the Tampa Bay has, yeah, I think so. I think I did too. But Tampa Bay has a good pitching staff. They've got, and then like you mentioned, the bullpen, which we're seeing in these series are super important. You want your starters to go 5, 6 innings, 7 innings, but those bullpen staffs, when they come in, their job is to save the game, keep it, where they're at, their team's ahead, or help their team get ahead. Tampa Bay did a really good job with that. And I think that's what's going to happen in this series with the Asterisks is I don't know that so far the Asterisks haven't seen pitching like Tampa Bay. Minnesota, I mean, you had Kenta Maeda, but then Oakland was a bust as far as pitching. So this could be it. They might go home.
I think, and you don't know who's going to step up out of the lineup. Mike Zunino, the catcher, has played a big role, and G-Man Choi, you don't know when he's going to do something, but he probably will. He can be clutch at times. Brandon Lau, of course, Arozarena was huge in that series. Joey Wendell was another guy that kind of stood out and who is real fast on the base path. So if they don't start him, I saw him come in as a pinch runner a couple of times. Kiermaier. These are guys that to most people, if you're not follow baseball and look at things and catch a game here or there for teams that you don't normally watch, or if you're just very casual and you don't see a lot of baseball at all, these aren't names that are necessarily familiar to you. But that's the kind of teams that always seem to win, that doesn't have a lot of big names. And that's what happened to the Yankees. They walked in, all these guys who normally hit well didn't. Brett Gardner for the Yankees, Clint Frazier, both had their moments, but those were guys that they were there on the edge. But Judge hit around 200, hit those 2 home runs. Aaron Hicks didn't hit great, drove in a couple of runs. It was really Stanton who provided most of the pop. Even Luke Voigt, almost nothing. So the guys that carried him through just didn't, they fell apart through here. So now with the Rays and the Asterisks, as we were talking about, the strengths of the Rays, obviously the bullpen is a huge strength. Playing in San Diego has helped a couple of guys, Margot and Hunter Renfroe, both played in San Diego. So they have a little more familiarity with the outfield. That can help them. And then they just have a lot of sources. You never know which one of those guys is going to step up and provide a clutch hit, come up with a big play. That'll be something to watch for. The Asterisks, when we talk about strengths, they have one big strength that's called cheating. And so they got that. And honestly, as much as I hate the team, they can put together a strong offense. Their pitching, I think, is suspect outside of Framber Valdez. He's the one guy who, even if he's losing by 6 runs, they leave him in there and he gives them a chance to come back. Greinke's not pitched well. McCullers been iffy. The bullpen's had moments, but the bullpen is primarily has been rookies this season. And they have guys that'll come up big. I don't know if they can be as shut down as they need to be, especially with a team that's also on a roll and is a much stronger team than the A's. They did have the best record in the AL coming in. So the Rays have all these great player and field things that could happen for them, and the Asterisks have cheating. So I'm going to go with the Rays to win this because I think everybody's watching for the cheating.
I think so too. I am definitely a Rays fan right now against the Asterisks because, as I have said before, if I'm a conspiracy theorist, I think there might still be something going on there. They're cheaters, period. Exclamation point.
It's hard to get past it. It really is. All right. So the Dodgers we'll get to in a couple of minutes. Right now, let's talk about the Braves Marlins series. The Marlins came in kind of looking like they were going to play the Cinderella role, perhaps. Of course, as we talked about last week, the Cubs weren't really a big challenge. It felt like the Cubs had kind of checked out a little bit. That's a lot to put on them after a 2-game series. But they did come in looking like they had a good chance to play to beat the Braves and maybe a little bit of a revenge after being beat badly by them, 29-9.
Yes, shellacked.
Shellacking, yes, to use your term.
My word. I gotta say though, this series, the Braves ended up sweeping the Marlins, and it almost felt like in reverse. We talked about last week how the Cubs and Marlins, and we saw that here in an inning here or there, or we would watch the scoreboard, but it really wasn't anything exciting or really kept your attention. And especially with the Braves, they swept them, and 2 of the games the Marlins had no runs. So,
right, they scored 5 runs in the 3-game series.
Yeah. So it just was one of those series that okay, it's there, but it just wasn't. Now, I'm sure if you're a Braves fan, it was really exciting, but for me, it was not.
You figure the Braves, this is their first in LCS in 19 years. Last time they went was in 2001, and they got beat by the Diamondbacks, the eventual World Series winners.
Right.
The Braves came out strong, but the guys that you expected didn't do it. And before I get too deep in that, is it just me, or do they have a couple of players on this team that sound like they should be in literature or in a Hallmark movie or on a soap opera? Dansby Swanson could be in like a Charles Dickens book or what, one of
Yes.
those like the Bronte sisters, Jane Austen. One of them
Yes.
could have had a character, or it's in the Hallmark. There's going to be like 900 new Christmas movies, which I'm not sure how they did. Are they all social distance pandemic Christmas movies this year? But there's going to be all these new Christmas movies on Hallmark. Seems to me like somebody named Dansby Swanson fits into one of those, or One Life to Live, or whatever's on. I don't remember. I don't know what's at General Hospital or what soap opera. Are there any soap operas still on TV? When I flip through, I don't really. If I'm watching TV in the afternoon, I'm probably watching Law and Order reruns. So I don't know what's on anymore. Before, you'd flip through on like the main channel, CBS, NBC, ABC. They all had during the middle of the day General Hospital, One Life to Live,
and when we were growing up, if we were at our grandma and grandpa Barnes's house, everybody got lunch. And then the kitchen was closed because grandma
house was closed.
Yeah, pretty much. But the kitchen, especially because grandma had a little TV in there, and that's where she would watch her soap operas. And you did not bother her during that time.
Or if you did, or you sat and you watched with her. I remember that one year we were in North Carolina, the summer of Luke and Laura.
Yes.
On General Hospital. We were all in there like, why? We got to wait till tomorrow?
Yeah, that's a good name, Dansby Swanson. He could be like Mr. Darcy, but Mr. Swanson.
But that first name Dansby. And
yes.
He really picked this team up and carried them through the division series. 2 home runs, batted .400, a triple, 5 RBIs. The only guy who actually did a little bit more than Dansby Swanson also sounds like maybe he should be in like the Count of Monte Cristo or the Three Musketeers, Travis d'Arnaud.
Yes. Yeah.
He's another one that could be on a soap opera with that name. Probably not Travis, but with the last name d'Arnaud, Mr. d'Arnaud.
Yeah.
I mean, he went 6 for 10 during the series. Couple of doubles, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs. Another guy who probably could have fit in with this whole thing, Austin Riley. Sounds like another of those names.
Yeah.
Although he could be hanging out with Glass now in the 80s movies. Austin Riley.
Yep.
He did good as well. But where was Freddie Freeman? Where was Ronald Acuna Jr.? Ozzie Albies? These are all guys who just weren't. Nick Markakis, which I kind of feel like Nick Markakis kind of sits off to the side because he came in so late.
Yeah, he had opted out and then opted back in.
Marcell Ozuna actually was kind of at the bottom. He was kind of that line between the guys you expected to do stuff and the other guys who stepped up a little more. Those 3 guys, Swanson, d'Arnaud, and Riley, all contributed through the season, but they really stepped up in this series.
Yeah,
Marcell Ozuna was Marcell Ozuna, 308, 3 RBIs, was 4 for 13 on the series. But those other guys were gone. What really worked for the Braves? Pitching, once again.
Yeah, they've got a good 1, 2, 3 starters there, with Max Fried obviously being the centerpiece.
And he actually had the worst outing in the 3 games. Ian Anderson, rookie, went 5.2, gave up no runs, struck out 8, only 3 hit. Kyle Wright, 3 hits, no runs, 8 Ks as well. He went 6. Max Fried only pitched 4, gave up 6 hits, 4 runs, struck out 4. The rest of that day with Max Fried, with that being the only day, that was game 1. That's the only time that the Marlins scored any runs. Max Fried and then Chris Martin, a reliever, he's the one that gave up the 5th run. The rest of the bullpen, I think it was 3 other pitchers that day, shut them down.
Yeah, and I forget that Mark Melancon is now in the Braves bullpen, and he was with the Nationals, and it was okay, but has really seemed to turn himself around with the Braves seems stronger when he comes in. He still looks nervous to me. He always has that nervous look about him.
I feel like he's waiting for the cops to bust him.
Yeah.
At any point, he kind of looks a little like a serial killer. Honestly, the look on his face and and then he's fidgety when he's out on the mound. It seems like he's having close to a seizure or something out on the mound, and he's constantly back and forth. Like you see guys that, they portray people like when they go to the loony bin, or to a mental hospital, and they go through, and there's always one or two guys in the movies or TV shows that are like in a corner, and they're just kind of standing there,
swaying
back and forth,
yeah,
stepping back and forth. That's what he does on the mound. And he stands. He's not in a normal pitching mode. He's not to a side or where you look like his wife. It just, yeah. But he's done well for them, which he's helped make that a strong bullpen. Will Smith, Tyler Matzik. They've got a strong bullpen as well, and that's definitely helped. Luckily for them, their starters have been able to go farther. We saw Max Fried through the season and in the wild card pitch really well.
I will say with Miami, they were missing Starling Marte. We thought he was going to be able to play with the broken pinky, but he wasn't on the roster. So I'm wondering, you'll look hindsight, he seemed to be one of the guys in the Marlins lineup that could get things going for the lineup, and he wasn't there. I don't know if they would have won the series, but I think that was a big hole for the Marlins.
It probably would have helped for him. Brian Anderson had to carry the load. He went 4 for 10. 400. Miguel Rojas, who is one of the few holdovers from the rebuild. He's one that survived all the trades and everything out of there and cuts. He hit a home run. Garrett Cooper, another one, 2 RBIs with a double. The pitching staff, which looked really strong, didn't have great outings. Sandy Alcantara, he went 6 innings. He went the most of any of the starters. He struck out 8, but gave up 5 runs in his game. Pablo Lopez, not a great game for him. 5 innings, probably the best ERA of the starters. Actually, Sixto Sanchez had the best ERA, but mostly that's because he only pitched 3 innings.
Yeah.
And he was the guy that came out of that Cubs series looking like a phenom.
Yeah, unstoppable.
He didn't look bad, but the Braves just looked better.
Yep.
That was it. The Braves were able to play him, and now it didn't help either that coming out of the bullpen for the Marlins was Yimi Garcia. Who looked like the Yimi we all know and love. Yimi Garcia's ERA in the series, 20.25.
Oh.
He pitched 1 1/3, gave up 3 runs on 4 hits.
Classic Yimi.
Yes, who honestly had looked pretty good for them throughout the season. He went quite a bit of the season without even giving up an earned run or any runs for that matter, but he looked just like the Yimi that we know from the Dodgers. So the Braves will move on. They'll head up the road from Houston to play the Dodgers in Arlington.
It's time for Dodger baseball.
Yeah, the Dodgers came in and wasn't sure how this series was going to go. I really was not expecting it to be a sweep. Thought that San Diego would make it a 5-game series, but
I thought the Dodgers would make it a 5-game series, honestly.
Well, I mean, I guess you could say either side, but yeah, the team, the Dodgers led the league in home runs, but in the series, they had 1 home run. 1. Cody Bellinger's home run.
That was it.
And that was it. And, speaking about a guy who looks, I don't see, he doesn't really look nervous, but he just, has ants in his pants. Mike Clevenger, I've never really sat and watched him pitch. Like I've seen him pitch, but it wasn't long enough to really watch it was very hard to watch him. I'm not sure what he's doing out there.
I'm telling you, we might have been like an opening day game a couple of years back versus the Indians. And he was the starter. He didn't have as much of that moving around, but his delivery was herky-jerky. It drives me crazy, that whole thing. I'm trying to remember, there was an Angels pitcher that had that kind of thing where they're constantly stepping. Kinley does it sometimes.
Yeah.
And Clevenger, we were just talking about, what's his name? Melanson from the Braves and the way he is. Clevenger's in that. And then he's got a violent delivery. It's hard to watch. And apparently it was hard for him too, because he didn't make it out of the first inning. And it wasn't because he pitched poorly.
He looked pretty good when I was trying not to watch him because it was so hard, but he looked pretty good. But then it was almost like all of a sudden Jace Hingler came out and the trainer came out, and that was the end. And he had re-injured his elbow, but it wasn't apparent. He didn't seem, maybe he knew something was going on, but it was odd. The whole
he didn't grab his
situation.
elbow. He wasn't shaking his arm. He didn't look bad.
Right.
And he didn't look like he had some sort of an injury coming up. So Clevenger's out. They're already missing their top two pitchers who were not added to the roster for this series. They didn't have Lamet or Chris Paddock. So now we've got him, Zach Davies coming up.
Yeah, the San Diego used 8 relievers in that first game. Walker Buehler pitched for the Dodgers. He had 8 strikeouts. He did escape a bases loaded jam that seemed like that was going to really open it up, but he was allowed to get out of it. Also, we did not see, I think maybe only 1 or 2 extreme close-ups of his finger. So that was nice.
Fox didn't have the same obsession with it that ESPN did. Now, here's the one thing about game 1 that was crazy. So Clevenger comes out early. The bullpen comes in. And until the 6th inning, and it was a 1-1 tie, but until the 6th inning, the Dodgers were being no hit.
Yeah, it was.
Through the 5th, they had scored a run thanks to walks and errors. Yeah,
they had 10 walks, the Dodgers did, in that game. So that's how they were getting on base, because they weren't hitting anything.
But thanks to the walks, they end up on base, score that run. So if you tuned in, it's 1-1. You wouldn't think that the Dodgers were being no hit at that point. But then the 6th inning broke open and the Dodgers did their damage.
Yeah, 4 runs in that inning. And I really think, Mookie Betts is the conduit for the lineup. When he gets on base, when he, whether he walks or he gets a hit, when he's on base, then the rest of the team follows. And he hit a double. The first hit in the game was a double by Mookie Betts. And after that, the Dodgers, like I said, in that 6th inning, they had a 4-run 6th inning.
Yeah, Mookie had a pretty decent series. He hit .333, 2 doubles, scored 5 runs. So he really did make things. And when you saw him get on base, you did see the team get energized. One thing that I did notice, Max Muncy only struck out 2 times in the whole series, but there's something going on with Max. He seems irritated all the time.
Yes, he does.
Especially at the plate. It doesn't matter what's going on. Something happened that was a delay. It had nothing to do with him. It wasn't because of a bad pitch call or, a strike or ball call. And he was annoyed. You could just see in his face he was annoyed by the delay, as if you're in a zone that your timing and everything. He did walk 4 times in the series, but he's had this thing, something going on with him all season long. And it was those moments when we saw him smile and seem loose, those when you're like, okay, Max, that's good. Hold on to that.
Yeah, because he is like, the old man that's telling everybody to get off his lawn, usually. Yeah.
He really has been. I'm not sure what was going on with him in that. Crazy.
He does have that look on his face. And so when he does get a hit and he gets a smile and we see it, it doesn't last.
No, because he's become that get off my lawn guy. Dodgers scored 23 runs over the 3-game sweep. Padres only managed 9. Cody Bellinger, he kind of led everybody, 5 RBIs, that 1 home run, hit .333. Will Smith had a huge game, I would say series, but all of his stats really, he had 5 hits in the series, all 5 of those in a record-breaking game.
Yeah, he set a franchise record. He went 5 for 6. Coming in, I think he was 0 for 11, something like that.
Yeah, and they were talking a lot about that.
Yeah, and he just, whatever happened, it was great because he was the hitting machine. I mean, it was just hit after hit Game 2 was interesting because, it was a good game. The Dodgers won 6-5. The big question now for the Dodgers, of course, in the bullpen is Kenley Jansen. Kenley Jansen came into that game and
tried to lose.
Tried to lose. Then they brought in Joe Kelly, and between the two of them, they had 49 pitches. That was a moment that I thought that the Padres were just gonna win. They were gonna score.
Yeah, it looked like there was a full-on collapse happening with the bullpen. Joe Kelly had a hard time getting to the plate. I mean, he threw some great pitches.
Yeah.
And he got out unscathed. But how many pitches went, what were they calling the term that's been used a lot on all the broadcasts? Non-competitive pitches. How many of his pitches were considered non-competitive?
Almost all of them.
He was trying to stay low and on a corner, and he couldn't do it. He kept bouncing them in there.
Yeah.
They were hitting before the plate. It's like 60 feet, 6 inches, and you're throwing 53.
Yeah.
The only person that's going to hit those balls is Vladdy Guerrero Sr. Maybe Ozzie Albies, because he's kind of an all-around hitter like that. But he didn't look good. He got out of it. What is it? The effectively wild?
Yeah.
He was not that.
Yeah, he really wasn't. I think
Kenley's the bigger. Joe Kelly didn't give up anything.
No.
He didn't look good with the way that he was pitching, and he made you think that he was about to give up some stuff, but he got out of it. Kenley, on the other hand, came in and it just blew up.
Yeah, and we saw that during the season. I mean, he looked better during the season, but as the season went on, the game that he had in with Game 2 is what he was like at the end of the season. So even in question is Kenley Jansen, is he still the closer for the Dodgers? And at this point, I would say no. Dave Roberts isn't going to say no. They're just saying, well, we're feeling things out, and they're not going to take Kenley off of the roster. He's going to be on the roster. Kershaw has come out, and I think even JT has come out and said, Kenley wants to win. And yeah, we know Kenley wants to win, but there's something not right. There's something in his head. I'm not sure. Velocity's not great. He has one pitch, that is working, and then he won't use it. And then the pitch that he does use, they start hitting off of him, and it just becomes a disaster.
Right. Yeah. He's not the game over kind of reliever that he used to be. And I think you might see him at an end of the game, but not in a close game. I think we're going to start seeing some other options, like Gratterall maybe. But even then, I don't even think we'll see necessarily Gratterall. I think it's going to be somebody different based on a matchup. And the sad part is that it feels like Dave Roberts has a better clue about using the bullpen, and you just never know what Kenley's going to do. That's the problem.
Right.
You want to go to him because, when he's on, he's lights out. So Kenley in that series pitched an inning and a third. He's got a 13.50 ERA. Actually, in that series, the only other reliever to have a bad series, Adam Kolarek.
Yeah, he did not look good on the mound. I think he walked in a run. It just, it wasn't comfortable being there. And I don't know too. Before he was the one batter specialist, they would bring him in for one batter. Now he has to face 3, but during the season, he's looked really good. So I don't know if it was, postseason jitters, or I wouldn't think so, but you just never know.
Maybe it was just a bad day. He went 2/3 of an inning, gave up 2 runs. Just everybody else coming out of the bullpen for this series put up zeros. Maybe a hit here or there, but nobody else gave up any runs. Except the only other one that came out of the bullpen that gave up a run was Julio. Urias pitched great, though. 5 innings, didn't give up any runs. I mean, just gave up that one run, which was a unearned run.
Yeah, he balked. So
Right, and so with that balk came a run. So that's charged to him. It was kind of a silly thing, honestly.
yeah,
We haven't seen Tony Gonsolin yet in any playoff game.
nope.
We've really only seen Buehler has started and will also start the first game versus the Braves.
Yep.
Kershaw's come in number 2. In this series, Kershaw had the one bad game, really, even though after game 1 and then obviously after game 3, game 2 was what we expected more from the Padres and expected them to tear things up.
Yeah.
Pitched 6, only struck out 6, gave up 3 runs. So he went deeper into the game than anybody else did. One of the bigger questions that I had throughout this was Dustin May's usage.
Yeah, he's coming in at different points of the game. He came in
Game 1.
Game 1, and then game 3, they used Dustin May. And I think that was partly because Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr., Dustin May has kind of had his way with them at the plate.
Well, they made a big deal about on the broadcast about Dustin May, the 2 innings that he pitched in game 1. It's like they can't hit him. It's like, do you want to leave him in there? Because he's the Padre killer.
Right.
And then having him start in game 3, which didn't surprise me because I thought, okay, he's going to start. He's going to go a few innings. I knew he wasn't going to go, go deep into the game because he had pitched 2 days prior. But in game 1, he only pitched for an inning. He didn't give up any runs, struck out 4 over the 3 innings. But it just seemed, why did they only use him like as an opener in game 3?
I wonder that too, because we've seen Dustin May pitch during the season and he's had good outings. He didn't always win the game, and some of that was because he just didn't have the offense, but he pitched well. And so, yeah, I'm wondering why he isn't just starting the game instead of being used for an inning, here or there. Julio Urias came in, he pitched, like you said, the 5 innings. He retired the first 10 batters he faced. He came in to not a good situation, got out of the jam. He allowed 1 hit with 6 strikeouts. So he looked really good. But I think he too is going to be one of those guys that, because he doesn't pitch well in the first inning, you're not going to see Julio until later in the game. And so maybe that's what they're doing with Dustin May, is using Dustin May at the beginning of the game and then bringing in Julio. But it still doesn't make sense to me when you have somebody like Dustin May, why you're not just starting them in the game.
My concern now with the Dodgers going forward, now you're going to be looking at needing to win 4, a potential 7-game series, no days off. The management of the bullpen worked good in a 2 or a 5 game, in a 3 or a 5 game series, but now it's going to take a little bit more, and you're not using. I suspect that in the championship series, we'll see Gonsolin probably come out and start a game where he hadn't before. But how's that going to work for him? He's only been doing probably bullpen sessions. He hasn't pitched since the end of the season.
Yeah, I think he pitched a simulated game on Saturday, I believe. But yeah, he hasn't been on the mound. And it's nice to say, well, we haven't needed him, but he's been so good. I don't know if they're, holding back, but I definitely think we're going to see him start a game in this series against the Braves.
And then are we going to end up with a bullpen game at some point? I figure if it goes a full 7, Walker, Buehler back, Kershaw back at the back end.
Right.
But if Gonsolin's there, unless you're going to slot May in somewhere to start a game, I'm not sure what's going to happen. And I'm not fully, even though the bullpen has looked good, I'm still worried about that because they're overly reliant on the bullpen.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think coming into this series too with the Braves actually are the best team that the Dodgers have seen so far, or will see so far in the two series that they played. I mean, obviously they played the Brewers. We thought that the Padres were going to be, maybe with the firepower, not so much with the pitching.
Slam Diego was there during the wild card. They picked it up right at the end. They came into this and it didn't carry over.
Right.
And I don't know if, what the issues were. Tatis hit 182, Machado 167. Machado had a home run, but both of those guys only had 2 hits in the series. Hosmer also 2 for 13, one of those being a home run. Cronenworth, another guy who was pretty, struck out 4 times. Will Myers struck out 5 times. These were all guys who were big parts of it. It was Tommy Pham hit 273, but struck out 4 times. And he was another guy. Every time you saw him, he was mad about something.
But I also learned something about Tommy Pham that I didn't know, and that he has a degenerative eye disease. And
really?
So, yeah. And so he really has to focus. You see him a lot with eye drops in the dugout. And I just thought, I wear contacts, so I'm like, oh, he has dry eyes. But yeah, he has a degenerative eye disease. And I think he had surgery a couple of years ago, but he has to be really focused on the ball. So that was interesting to find out.
It was when he was walking away.
Yeah.
And then the guy that I thought I don't remember seeing him do anything, but our favorite Padre, Trent Grisham, actually also hit 273. So Pham and Grisham, top 2, 273. He struck out 5 times, but he drove in 2 runs or got 2 RBIs, however it worked out. They weren't even close to, and maybe, the letdown after winning the 1 game of that last series in the regular season, their World Series victory, took it all out of them. But it wasn't the Padres team that we expected, nor was it a Padres team that gave the Dodgers any adversity.
Yeah, they didn't have any adversity.
Except for the game 2 almost lost, but that was more
a Dodger problem.
Than it was.
So that was the Dodgers' adversity. They got when Machado hit his home run and yelled toward the dugout, and it seemed they started getting into it. But that was the only time during the whole series that you saw that the brashness of the Padres that they've been showing throughout the season.
Yeah, there wasn't anything to be that excited about. And you can tell when the tide is turning, when a couple of hits and then or they score a run or somebody hits a home run, it gets up, it gets a base hit or something, and it starts building like that. That didn't happen with them. Rarely any momentum.
Yeah, I will say we have to mention the awesome catch by Cody Bellinger that robbed Tatis of a home run. That one. And
that was in this game 2, which was the exciting game.
Yeah.
Which was the only time that you saw any fire from anybody. And once again, it was Machado, the laziest guy on the field. After the catch, Brusdar got Gratterall, very excited, threw his glove, threw his hat, and Manny Machado took offense to it.
Yeah, was barking at him.
Tatis was was mad, talking to himself in the dugout, but Machado was yelling at Gratterall, using a lot of your favorite words.
Yeah,
those word in
buzzwords. Yep.
And what I loved was the Dodgers, with the exception of the old man telling Manny Machado to get off his lawn.
Yeah.
Max Muncy was the only one that came out ready to brawl. Mookie, JT, even Gratterall. They came in. Mookie just kind of waved him off. Both of them were laughing at Machado.
Well, and Brusdar was blowing kisses at Manny.
And what was funny is the next day, Cody ended up at second base. He and Tatis were laughing about it. It just wasn't. He was upset about it at the time because they want to move on. They want to play better. And he's been slumping, but he realized it was a great play.
Yeah. And there's a clip and you can hear the two of them, talking. You don't hear everything, but you hear Cody saying, man, if you did that to me, I'd be so mad. And then they just laugh,
And a lot of players that went out there were laughing and joking. The only one they weren't laughing and joking with was Machado.
Yeah. It's
And
probably because he had bet his salary against
then,
that fan that they were going to win the World
right.
Series before the Dodgers.
And he knew that was slipping away. I liked it. A lot of people came out and said, hey, it's like a bat flip. He threw his
Yeah.
hat. He did that. And did you see at one point, Joe Kelly, I don't remember if it was the end of that game or game 3, they were coming through the line at the end of the game, high-fiving, and Joe Kelly took his hat off like he was going to throw it, and he with Gratterall. And they had
Right.
that little moment like, that's funny.
Yeah.
And they laughed about it and went on. Machado was the only one that was really, the rest of the team was like, fine,
Yeah.
They
And in the
didn't
next
have issues with it.
no, and in the next game, the Padres out 12-3. Will Smith in that game went 5 for 6. It was a bullpen game again, which we mentioned. Justin Turner is now top of the Dodger list for postseason. Most postseason hits was 64. Steve Garvey was on top of that list with 63. JT has surpassed him.
I wonder, I didn't look at it and just now popped in my head. I wonder how many playoff games, because JT's been there through this run.
Yeah.
Where he's going to the playoffs every year and a lot of, going deep into the playoffs. I'm wondering how many playoff games because there were less playoff games as well when Steve played, because there was only 2 divisions. There was the East and the West.
Yeah.
So the first round was the championship series. Dodgers versus whoever came, Phillies or whoever came out of the East.
Right.
Same thing out of the American League. So the question is, so that's shorter amount of games. It was a 5-game series. Then you go to World Series.
Yeah.
So now the Dodgers and the Braves are going to meet up there in Arlington. The Marlins were no challenge for the Braves. The Reds challenged them with pretty excellent pitching. And I would say pitching better than what the Dodgers have been. Kershaw, obviously, and Buehler both have the chance to pitch well, to pitch lights out. But will they, being number one? And will they be the same challenge that the Braves went through with the Reds?
Yeah, going into this series, both the Braves and the Dodgers haven't lost. They, won their wild card games decisively, swept the division. This Braves team is going to be a challenge for the Dodgers. They're pretty evenly matched. When you look at their starting pitching, you have Max Fried, Cy Young candidate there, Ian Anderson, Kyle Wright. The Dodgers, they have Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw. That number 3 starter has always been a question mark throughout the season. I think it should be Tony Gonsolin, but
yeah, that's where you would have seen David Price potentially.
Right. Yeah.
And honestly, you kind of forget David Price is a Dodger because of opting out.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but this season felt like a full long season.
It really did.
The playoffs have seemed like longer than even the regular season now.
Yeah.
It's only been, what, 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's only been 2 weeks, but it's every day with games. And that's the other thing, too, is when you look at starting pitching for the Braves, starting pitching for the Dodgers, and you look at their bullpens, these 2 teams really it's going to be a good series. Brian Snitker has said that he is already thinking about using Max Fried on short rest, what game that will be, because he'll pitch game 1. Where will he slot in again? A lot of the guys in the Braves bullpen, we talked about Mark Melancon. The Braves bullpen, they do well. The Dodgers bullpen does well. But a lot of these guys, they've seen each other before. And so will that be on either side? Will that be an advantage for some of the guys like Mark Melancon, who was with the Nationals? The Dodgers have seen him. They know what he throws. They haven't seen the Braves this year.
Matters.
Yeah, I don't know either. But
because even though you've seen him before, you haven't seen him this year. You're more familiar with the same group of pitchers, and then they played in the wild card round was the first time they played anybody outside of the West.
Right.
And that wasn't a good team. Although Woodruff pitched well against them, that was probably the Padres didn't have their best starters. Not to say that things wouldn't have been the same. They didn't see strong pitching from the Padres. They saw a weak Padres team compared to normal. And now they're going to be seeing some pitching that you've got guys that are stepping up. Max Fried, obviously, a Cy Young candidate, as you mentioned. Ian Anderson's a rookie. You don't know what's going to happen with him, but if he just doesn't have any clue about what this really is, he may pitch above himself because he doesn't have a full true meaning of it. I'm worried too about the Dodgers. The Dodgers seem to have issues there in Texas because they're familiar with the field and they know how it plays. Mookie even said something about it, that they need to get that out of their head. It doesn't matter. This is your home field for all purposes. Will the Braves come in and feel like, oh my God, this is a tough place to play, or will they just come in like it's any place else and take it over?
Yeah.
This will also be the first series that the Braves that they're not technically the home team to start.
Right. Yeah. They don't have that the
So
home.
I don't know what to expect from this. The Dodgers, for as strong, when you see the numbers, they look like they're unstoppable. The Braves, though, when you start looking at their numbers, the Dodgers hitting 291 with runners in scoring position. The Braves hit around 274 with runners in scoring position. Pretty close.
Yeah. They're really evenly matched. I think with the Dodgers, one of the things that the Dodgers offense has to do is they're going to have to continue to be patient in the batter's box. They did a good job, and they've done a good job of that. But they need to get that pitcher's count up. So if they can get a 9 or 10 pitch, at bat, that's really going to help them going forward. But they've got to be patient, especially against the Braves pitching, because again, they didn't see the same from San Diego, a little bit from the Brewers, but they just can't come in. And we mentioned Cody Bellinger had that one home run in the series against San Diego, but the Dodgers did a really good job of playing small ball. They had, Cody had a triple, but there were doubles, there were singles, and they also were capitalizing on getting walks, so getting somebody on base, and then also errors. So it's going to be a much better series than San Diego, which I think we anticipated to be better than it was.
Well, by better, if you mean more evenly matched and
right, yeah,
potential for better games. Yes, better from the standpoint that the Dodgers could drop this series. Like I said, we look at the Dodgers, they look great on paper, but when you watch them, it feels like, and as strong as they are, and they talked about this a lot, especially in that game 3, John Smoltz was very big on the completeness of the Dodgers roster. But I see that they're not coming out and hitting. I never feel like that there's not a chance for them until the last out.
Right. But yeah, I think you're right there, because one of the things they also need to do, not only being patient in the batter's box, but I think when they score a run first, when they get on board first, that gives them momentum for whatever reason. I don't ever feel like we have momentum. Even I think that obviously the last game with the Padres, 12-3, you could feel that. It felt like just one of those games, like they just broke it open and they went. After 2 games that were a little harder, because game 1, no hit till the 6th inning. Game 2, they actually played well, and like we said, the Padres came back more due to bad pitching than to them not scoring, to the Dodgers not scoring runs. Game 3 was a blowout. There was never any doubt. But there's still that feeling is you don't know what's going to happen when the relievers come in. Maybe when Gonzalez or Gratterall come in, Blake Trinan mostly when he comes in, you don't feel so bad. When Kinley comes in, you get nervous. The Dodger world we all hold our breath. Yes.
Joe Kelly, he's really been a guy that's good for one batter, maybe two, but a lot of times he's coming in, getting a last out, and he doesn't come back. And I'm feeling like that's a great use for him.
Yeah, it really is. You don't really want him to be in there any longer.
And that's the thing. I'm worried about that. And I'm also not sure what to expect when these guys come up. And it feels like sometimes if Mookie doesn't do something, or maybe JT, because JT had some hits.
Yeah.
And they just left him there.
Yeah, they did leave a lot of guys stranded. It's felt like anyway. But yeah, I feel that way.
What how many people they left on base throughout the series? I know that they've left fewer runners on base throughout the season compared to the Braves. The Braves left 437. The Dodgers only left 391. So they're able to get guys in. It just doesn't feel like it. And especially in times when they're down, if it's early and they're down a couple runs, a lot of times that's when they get to the bullpen.
Yeah.
So they've got to take advantage of the starters that they face who might be in there longer.
Yep.
They have the potential to win this. I hope they win it. But unlike the past two, I was pretty sure they were going to beat the Padres going in, just because I thought that the Padres would beat themselves at some point.
Yeah.
And they did a little bit, but the Dodgers played pretty well. And
I think for me, I watch the Dodgers all the time, and when we get to the postseason, as much as like, yeah, they're gonna win. There's always, and this is probably every Dodger fan, there's always doubt. It's the Dodger doubt. You don't want to doubt your team, but you look at past experiences, and it's always in the back of your mind.
Seems like you're on a rickety bridge, and that's the only way across, and you got to kind of, you got to hit like every third board is still there. So you got to be careful and hold on. And then some of the railings not, and every time you move the wrong way, it shakes and you're just about ready to fall off. And you maybe even have a moment when Kinley comes in that you actually fall and you're hanging by that slat, trying to pull yourself up.
Or the rope is frayed.
Right. There's too many. The journey is fraught with challenges that you just didn't expect based off of what you saw. Was watching the movie Speed the other day, and remember they get on the freeway and they think they're good for a while, and then they find out there's a section of the interchange that's not completed.
Missing. Yes.
That's how I feel like with this team, that
it really is.
Really got to put the pedal to the metal and hope that we can jump over that big gap in the freeway.
Yep. That is perfect. It's the Dodgers and all their fans on the bus with Sandra Bullock driving.
We're all right there. And the problem is Kinley's the one that's driving.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, Sandra couldn't make it this time, but
no, she wasn't available. This was the next day. Remember in the movie, she said she wasn't available to drive.
That's right.
The following day. All right. So Rays and Asterisks. Who's moving on, regardless of your personal feelings?
No, I really feel the Rays are going to move on based on they had a lot of challenges during the year. They had pitchers that were on the IL, but they were able to cobble those wins throughout the season, had the best record in the American League. So I think the Rays will win the championship series.
I agree with you. They have a pretty solid team, and I think their bullpen may be one of the best in baseball, and that's going to really help them. And their starters are stepping up. They just need Blake Snell to have a solid back to his Cy Young ways.
Yes.
All right, I know you hate doing this, but Dodgers, Braves.
Especially because I'm on that bus that's has to get over that gap.
Every time I start talking about this, I get like a hybrid of Stevie Wonder and Stevie Ray Vaughan in my head singing Superstitious.
It is.
The writing's on the wall.
I don't want to say, this is going to be a tough one because I think Atlanta could possibly pull it out against the Dodgers because they haven't been there. What'd you say? 19 years. They're hungry. and they got the pitching. They got Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna Jr. I'm not a big fan of his, but he seems to get them going in the dugout. So
they have literary figures.
And
Anthony
they have
Swanson, Travis d'Arnaud.
They do. They have the literary figure.
And think about it, that they had, 2 or 3 of their guys who normally carried them did nothing. That could change this series. Freddie Freeman could step up. Acuna Jr. could step up. Ozzie Albies. They could all do that. And if these other guys continue on, it's going to be tough on Dodger pitching.
It really is.
It's going to that will put a strain on the Dodgers offense because they're going to have to come through.
Yeah, they can't wait for Mookie to get the hit and then they follow. Everybody up and down the lineup is going to have to contribute, and they can't wait for the conduit, as I like to call
Right, you
Mookie.
can't do like the players have done on basketball court with Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Magic Johnson, where these are guys who can make something happen. So as soon as he gets the ball, Michael Jordan was one of these. As soon as he gets the ball, everybody moves out and just to watch him play.
Right.
That's what they're doing with Mookie. We're going to wait till Mookie does something, and then Mookie sets our tone. Well, Mookie's going to do that. He's going to do what Mookie does. He's been consistent all year, but sometimes he's going to need a little help. He can't carry it all himself, especially when you get 2 better teams like the Braves. And as you said, pretty evenly matched. I still think the Dodgers can pull it out, but I don't see a sweep this time.
No, I don't either. Going to be a defibrillator type of series.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see them do it in 5, but it's probably going to be, I would say 6. Either way.
I see that too. Yeah.
Whoever wins will win in 6. Obviously, I'll be pulling for the Dodgers. I hope it's the Dodgers. I can say that if the Braves make it to the World Series and the Rays, which are 2 teams that are familiar with each other,
yes,
this season, I'll go with the Rays for the World Series.
Me too, and that's really based on the fact that the Braves, growing up, they were America's team because they were on TBS.
They were in the West.
And they were in the West, and they played the Dodgers quite a bit. And I'm not a Braves fan, don't like the Braves. So
I have to go with the Rays anyway.
The Rays.
And I'll tell you this, just like you're saying, when the Braves, was it 96 World Series, the Braves and the Yankees, I actually hate the Braves so much that I bought a Yankees hat to cheer the Yankees in the World Series. And normally I don't buy hats from other teams unless I go to their stadium.
Right.
All right. So we will see the championship series is going on. We will talk about it next week. The World Series starts on October 20th. We'll have a good idea we'll know who's in by the end of this week. And we'll talk about all of that next week. And that'll do it for this week's Sibling Rivalry Baseball podcast.
Remember, you can find us on our website, siblingrivalrybb.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at Sibling Rivalry BB.
We're also on Twitter at Sibling Rivalry BB without the A. Email us, show@siblingrivalrybb.com. We'd love to hear what you think, so subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to our podcast.
Next week on Sibling Rivalry Baseball, who's crying now and who's still believing?
I think Josh Fields relates more to separate ways.
You're out!